Hey, what's up? It's Jordan, the Millionaire Millennial. In this video, I want to talk about the top books that I think everybody needs to read. Now, I want to preface this video by saying I'm not going to be talking about like the stereotypical books that everybody needs to read, like, you know, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People or Think and Grow Rich or Rich Dad Poor Dad. Those books are kind of like a prereq. So yes, those books are great. You should go read those books. I actually want to go through some of the books that I've read in the past few years that have impacted me like a lot. I'm gonna talk about what the book's about and then how that book's impacted me and like what it's made me think and how it's played a role in my overall success. The first book that I wanna get into is called Lose or Think by Scott Adams. Now let me just say, Scott Adams is a total He is very pretentious and writes this book from that kind of point of view. And so he's talking down to you as a reader quite a lot. In spite of all that, it's actually a really great book that teaches you how to avoid wasting time thinking about things that really just don't matter. Thinking about things like,
climate change, I wonder if that's going on, I wonder if it's real, I wonder if this...
The point is, like, you can't really do much about it, you're not an expert in that field, so don't waste your time worrying about it, thinking about it. He also talks about how you need to quit judging people based on what you think they're thinking because you can't read minds, so there's no point in thinking that you know what other people are thinking. I've caught myself doing that plenty of times where I'm like,
oh, this person, they're trying to do that. I know what they're thinking.
You don't? So this is a really great book for really anybody, and he wrote it for anybody and everybody to read. It's not just like a business or entrepreneurship book, but it's still a really good book if you want to learn how to think like a productive human being. Now, this next book on my list is probably the most popular book I have on my list, and it's also one of my favorites, and that's Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. He really goes into detail about what makes successful people and how there's so many different aspects of that, and it's not just like one event. It's like so many different things influence your future. This book really helped me by showing me that everything's kind of connected. Like, I think more about the first, second, third order consequences of things that I do on a daily basis, because some of the examples that he gives in the book are really, really interesting stories. Stuff like if you're born in a certain month, your percentage rate of going to college or graduating college drops significantly. So it's really interesting to see like certain things that you don't have control over, like when you're born, and how those can play into the overall effects of your success. He also talks about things that are in your control that you can change. So it's very much like a create your own luck kind of thing, but it's not really luck, right? It's just cause and effect. For example, if you take this action, then there's a percentage chance that this action will happen. And so you kind of start thinking about these things more, at least I did after I read this book, about all of the little things throughout the day, because it's not just one action, like one defining moment that defines your success forever. It's like the daily accumulation of little actions that you take every single day. You know, people always talk about
taking massive action. You gotta take massive action right now to be huge. You gotta make tons of money.
Big action!
Now, I know what you're probably thinking right now. Man, this is a really great video. And if you are, go ahead and hit that like button and be sure to subscribe because there's plenty more where this came from.
in reality, it's tiny actions throughout the day that progress you to be successful. It's not just big, huge steps. It's small little steps forward. And this book really kind of concreted that idea in my head that, hey, every day I need to be doing something to progress myself. And so I need to be creating opportunities for myself. I need to be manipulating luck, because it's not about luck. It's about putting yourself intentionally in situations that are going to give you the best result and help you move forward in your progress to being successful. So again, this is probably one of my favorite books I've ever read. Really great, big recommend. So the last book that I want to talk about when it comes to mindset is going to be Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. Now, Simon Sinek has spent a lot of time studying successful people, in particular in bigger companies and leadership roles, and optimizing different structures like management, especially in large companies. And so his viewpoint on these kinds of things I take very seriously and I find very valuable. And in particular in this book, because he's written a lot of different books, this is my favorite of his. And it talks about how just because you're a leader, just because you're in charge, doesn't mean that you get everything, right? It doesn't mean, oh, you know, I'm making all this money and it's all mine. Like, you need to understand that as a leader, if you're in charge of something, that you're eating last. And what that means is, and I'll use an example here because it's a literal example as well as a figurative example of, being part of a tribe, or even being a, wolf, like an alpha wolf in a pack of wolves. The person that's in charge, or the wolf that's in charge, is out hunting and gathering and getting resources for the group. And when they come back, they don't take it all for themselves, right? In fact, they take very little. They take what's ever left. Because what it means to be in charge of a group, it means that you have to feed that group. Because without the group, there is no leader. And Simon really talks a lot about the mentality of a leader and kind of the angle that you have to take in order to be a successful leader. And I really appreciate that angle that he gets at, because it's important to understand, even if you're self-employed, even if you don't plan to ever hire anybody, you're still leaving a job potentially where you had a leader, you had a boss, to be your own boss. And you need to understand what it means to be a good leader. Even if you're working by yourself, even if you're self-employed, you're still your own leader, or rather you're leaderless. And so you need to understand the mentality of what it means to be a good leader and to set a good example, not just for your whole company, but also for yourself. So this next book is kind of like under wraps. I feel like quite a hipster for having read this book, because really I haven't ever heard anybody else talk about this book. I would have never even found this book, but my business partner recommended it to me that he had read. I don't even know how he found it, but it's a really great book, and it's called Lost and Founder by Rand Fishkin. Now, if you don't know who Rand Fishkin is, you're not alone. He's pretty unknown, I think, but he is the founder of Moz. So if you do anything with search engine optimization, you probably have heard of Moz. It's like a tool suite that you use for search engine optimization, or SEO, and he founded that company, and he's the startup founder. And this book is all about, well, the subtitle to the book is A Painfully Honest Field Guide to the Startup World, and that is very accurate. And the reason I really enjoy this book is because he goes into the details of his failures. And I think that that is super, super important, because anybody can talk about how successful they are, even if they're not, they can just make it up. But very, very few people actually talk about all of the bad things that have happened to them along their way. And this is a painfully honest field guide. And so he goes into a lot of deep details about all of the bad things that have happened as he's building his company. One of my favorite parts was when he was talking about how he had an offer to sell his company for like millions and millions of dollars, and he denied it. And years later, it's one of his biggest regrets. Like, he regrets hugely not selling his business when he could have, and how that like haunts him to this day and stuff. So this book has personally helped me obviously avoid the same mistakes that he made, but it's also helped me kind of see the path that you need to take in order to become successful and have a successful business. He talks about, you don't really need to take venture capital. In fact, he doesn't even recommend you do, because he did, and that was another mistake that he regrets. So it's just nice to see all of the different things that he did wrong, so that I can learn from them and not make those same mistakes. And speaking of showcasing all of your failures, the next book I want to talk about is The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. And I love this book because, again, he goes into all of the really deep and painful details of being a CEO of a company and running a company, because it's not all gumdrops and rainbows. In fact, there's very few gumdrops or rainbows on the road to building a successful company. He talks about how he had to lay off a ton of people, and these were good, hardworking people. Some of them were his friends that he'd been friends with for years, that they were great workers, but he couldn't afford to pay them anymore. And so he had to lay them all off. And these are realities that happen when you run a company. Sometimes you have to let people go because you can't afford to pay them, because, well, your company's not doing too well right now. And so he talks about all of the, hard things about hard things, and the toll that it takes on your mental health, and how, he comes out on the other side and he's just crazed and insane because of all of the difficult challenges that he's had to go through. And so this book has helped me a lot, because building a business is not a straightforward path. There is no step-by-step guide, and I feel like that's what people are like obsessed with nowadays, is like,
show me the step-by-step guide how to do this. Get your free step-by-step guide now. Look at this step-by-step-by-step.
And the thing is, there is no step-by-step guide. You can learn about the techniques and the strategies that people before you have used to become successful, but that's not going to lay the groundwork for you to build your own business. And what really helped me with this book was that I was pretty lost with my business. I didn't have a step-by-step guide, and I thought I should. And I'm like trying to find one. I'm like, how do I solve these problems? How do I do this? Or I'm really unsure about the steps that I'm taking. And this book really helped me be comfortable with the fact that most of the time I don't know what I'm doing. And at least half the time I'm unsure with the decisions that I make. And the thing is, that's okay. You don't have to know everything about everything in order to start a business or be successful in any avenue. The thing is, it's a learning experience for everybody. And even though you may not know anything about what you're doing, you can still take a step forward. Just like in Outliers, how I was talking about, it's just one little step every day, not just some big, massive action. You just have to take small steps forward. And even though you may not know if those steps are the right steps to take, that's okay. As long as you accept that you might not know where you're going, you can just still move forward. And eventually you'll figure out, okay, that step was bad, so I'm going to go in this direction. And then you can start moving that way. And this book really just helped me understand that no one really knows what they're doing, and everybody's kind of figuring it out as they go along. And there is no playbook, there is no secret formula, there is no step-by-step process. It's just fumble along until you figure it out. That being said, you can find people that will help you along the way, and I'm very thankful for the people that I've had in my life that have kind of given me pointers or tips or showed me. And obviously I'm incredibly thankful for all these books that I'm talking about in this video, because again, these have influenced me a ton and have helped me just honestly an immeasurable amount. I mean, all these books that I'm talking about have, it costs like 20 bucks or less, and so I can't even tell you the ROI on all these books. So I'd really recommend this one if you're kind of unsure about where you're at, because that's okay to be unsure. So the very last book I want to talk about is a book called Unshakable by Tony Robbins. Now, I'm not a huge Tony Robbins fan. I just want to say that first. I've never really watched a lot of his stuff or seen his videos. I know he's very inspirational and very loud and proud and, screaming at people. And I'm not a fan of that kind of stuff, as you probably know. But this book is actually a really, really great guide. And I know that I said earlier that there is no step-by-step secret formula, but when it comes to actually planning out your financial life, as in investing your money, this is a really great guide on how to exactly go about doing that. One of my favorite parts of this book, let me see if I can find it. On page 43, if you're following along, you can see that he talks about a 20-year span of the stock market. And then he says, if you're invested every single day, you get an 8% yearly return, which is normally what we hear, right? Everybody talks about, oh, the S&P returns 7 or 8% a year. It's great, it's good. And that's great and dandy. But what they don't talk about is that if you miss the top 30 days of trading, your return is actually 0% per year. And in fact, if you miss the top 40 days, you lose almost 3% a year. And so that averages out to only like a day or two per year. So as long as you stay invested, as long as you don't pull your money out, you'll actually end up making a lot more. But the thing is, if you pull your money out, or you try to time the market, or you try to, oh, I'm gonna buy it because it's gonna go up tomorrow, and then I'm gonna sell it because it's gonna go down. If you try to be predictive, if you try to make speculation calls like that, you can end up losing a lot. Again, this is a 20-year period, and he looks at the top 30 days of trading. So you want to make sure that you stay invested. So this book kind of showed me the ins and outs of investing in the stock market. In particular, he talks about investing in the S&P 500. And most of my portfolio is made up of the S&P 500. And I don't ever pull my money out because this book kind of showed me the math behind it. And he also goes into how you need to start investing early, and how if you invest throughout your 20s, you can actually stop investing, as in stop putting more money into the stock market at 30, and you'll end up having more money when you retire than someone who started investing at 30 and then invested like every year until they retire. So I know the compound interest is like, yeah, compound interest, blah, blah, blah. But this book really hammered it home for me, because I guess I didn't fully grasp its potential entirely. And also this little bit about how you need to just stay in your investments and not, pull your money out because you think it's going to go down. Just how you need to live through the downturns so that you can enjoy the upturns. And if you miss out on those upturns because they only happen on average like 1 or 2 days a year, you'll actually lose out on a ton of money. Go from 8% per year to 0, or even lose several percent. Thanks for watching this video of my top 6 books. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you actually go out and read these books because they're really influential, they're really powerful, have some really great information. So if you haven't read all of these, definitely go read them. And like I said at the beginning of the video, if you haven't read the classics like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Think and Grow Rich, Rich Dad Poor Dad, etc. And as you can see, I've got a lot of other books on my bookshelf too. So these aren't the only books that are really influential and powerful. There's a lot of books out there that have the power to change the way you think and help you build your business and build your wealth and just honestly live a better and happier life. So get out there and get reading, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.